I just want to introduce Anne-Marie Williams from Weinmann, who's a critical care nurse originally.
Yep.
And so together as a team, we've been developing fully automated CPR now since 2019, so a good 4 years. Just to say, this mode and what we're going to be talking about, all right, is really cutting edge stuff. I need you to take everything you've learned about CPR, and I honestly need you to really concentrate on physiology for this next hour. And this is what we're going to do. This is going to be something that's going to completely blow your minds. I need you, please, if you don't mind, so to get involved. There's 4 separate times to get involved, so we can get everybody involved. Obviously, if you don't want to, you don't have to, but it would be nice just to get a resuscitation team up now, if you don't mind. So I just need, say, 4 people, just to start off. Really don't mind. Decide what you're going to be. Someone's going to be a team leader. And we're going to swap around. We're going to give other people jobs to do. We're going to be, there's a procedures doctor. Look at that. You know, there's plenty to go around, plenty of love to go around here. All right. Who's going to be at the airway?
Stick it on.
There we go. You can be the airway. Yeah, stick on your shirt. Right, we're going to keep this really, really simple. What are we going to be? We're not going to call you the scribe. That wouldn't be fair. Okay. So we've got an airways doctor. We've got a procedures doctor. And we've got... we've got another procedures doctor there as well. Look, just to keep it all fair. Okay, so this person, she walked into the emergency department complaining of being really, really short of breath and bad indigestion. She was literally about to give her name, and she collapsed at the front desk at the person who marks you in. All right, that's her. Go. No, nope, not at all. Everything you need there. What do you want to do? What do you want to use? No, Anne-Marie, hang on.
No, I just...
Are you using a ventilator normally, or would you normally use...
BVM.
Yeah.
You want one of these? Fine.
Yeah.
I'll give you whatever you want to use.
Thank you.
Okay, 1 minute.
Yeah.
Get the mask.
There's some oxygen.
Yes, oxygen.
Thank you.
What do you want?
Defibrillator.
Defibrillator pads, you put them on? Yeah, that's fine. Put them on.
Okay, so we get a rhythm.
Okay.
You want a rhythm?
Prepare to intubate. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're about to get a rhythm.
You got a rhythm there.
Okay, let's check the rhythm. Okay, VFib, let's start to, how do I
Okay.
configure this? I want to defibrillate. Start CPR again.
Start CPR.
You want to defibrillate?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to set the thing on for defibrillation. That's fine. It's going.
You do that?
Yeah.
Or- yeah, all right. And then I want to take it back out.
Stand clear of the patient. Stand clear of the patient.
Hang on, we're going to do the defibrillation now. If we want to do it, yeah.
And shock.
Hang on, power's on. Energy's on. Yeah. Charging.
Okay, then we could actually
Go on.
do CPR during...
Do you want to do CPR now?
Not now.
Oh, you want a shock? All right, shock delivered.
Okay.
And I take a blood gas.
Okay.
And do I send this to someone?
Yeah, you can, yeah. It's no problem. Yeah.
All right.
All right, so we're doing high performance CPR now.
You do
I
it.
think you've... you want to intubate?
Yes, please.
Okay, then intubate.
Behind you.
You're shouting into
Yeah.
the window, you?
You can just wheel intubation. You can do wheel
Come on,
intubation.
do the intubation.
I can't.
Who can?
I can't.
Okay.
I mean, if I have the equipment, yes.
Yeah, I give you the equipment. Yeah. Stilet. Laryngoscope.
So time is ticking on.
Yeah.
We're actually 5 minutes into it at the moment. Genuinely, that's where we're at. We've got one shock in.
So and oxygen we have here. Good.
And we've one shock in. Is everybody kind of happy on this yet? Or can we do some improvements?
You can wheel intubation. Do wheel
There we go.
intubation.
Okay, good. I think so. Can we try that? See if it's in place?
Then take the back.
Do I have any stethoscope?
Where is it? On the floor. Oh man, that.
Do I have a stethoscope?
How do I put this on now? Den där kan där.
Well, you had it on the...
Verkligen pumpa nu. I think this is supposed to be stuck in here. So we take this out.
You think? Yeah. Do I have a stethoscope? Or I just simulate that I...
You can listen, yeah?
Okay, I listen. Do I hear any breathing?
Yeah, hopefully it is. You can see if you
So,
get Erwin, you have
have you got CO2 coming back there, yes or no? Is there CO2 coming back on the monitor, yes or no?
2.0, so it's
Okay. Now, what do you want to do next?
it's probably time for a new rhythm check.
Okay. So then, what do you think it is?
So still VPB. We want
Okay.
to different
Yeah,
place.
okay.
So charging.
Yeah.
And continue CPR.
Charging. Guys, you're at 7 minutes now, by the way.
All right, and shock.
Shock?
Yes, stand clear.
Oh, well, we shocked them. That's fine. Okay. All right. So, what's wrong?
Doesn't look very good.
Well, the CO2 trace. Why do you think your CO2 trace is so bad?
We will recheck.
No, guys, give me some options. Why could the CO2 trace be so bad? Bad compressions, maybe? I think its compressions aren't too bad. So,
okay, then leave it. Then leave it.
it is in.
Oh, now you take it out. Oh.
Okay, stop there for a second. Stop there for a second. You just gently put that in. I will let you do. Okay. So, what is high performance CPR? What is high performance CPR? Just randomly throw stuff at me. You guys can throw. Good quality compressions. What about the compressions? No breaks in the compressions?
Take your time.
Yeah, and there's a few definitions of how deep you need to go, good quality recoil, rate of 100 to 120. You guys all know the guidelines, yeah? Okay, fine. So we're doing high performance CPR here. Fine, fair enough. We're intubating and we're getting a few shocks in. Okay, nothing really new. Now, fair enough. This team came together as scratch. They don't know the equipment. They don't know the patient, and they're performing as you expect them to perform. And I think that's okay. All right. We got CO2 back, but just because the CO2 is low, that could be a patient factor. The patient's dead. Yeah, they haven't got perfusion. All right, so that could be a factor. That's okay. Have a good look at that screen there. Would you like to reliably, during CPR, the patient's in refractory VF at the moment, would you like to reliably get a blood pressure like that? This patient is in VF. Would you like to get a blood pressure like that? Would you like to get SATs like that? Would you like to get end-tidal CO2? And bear in mind, this is in kilopascals, like that. It is high, but it means you've got, right, okay. All guideline consistent depth and rate, yeah? You'd like that, wouldn't you? Now, you don't believe me that this patient's in arrest, do you? There's no sound for this video. Okay. This is fully automated CPR. But I need to explain this to you because it's not just about the chest compressions. What is CPR? Cardio, and what's the P? Pulmonary. All right. So there's something more to this. All right. So have just a brief seat there. We'll be bringing you guys back. I think you're doing very well. Okay. So this is my team. This is an important picture to me because this was taken in autumn of 2019, just before the pandemic. And at the time, this team had a ROSC on arrival to hospital rate of 18%. I spoke, now that's pretty good, isn't it? It's not bad, all right? That's our average in Ireland, all right? I spoke already yesterday about our MEHL and our 10% defibrillation happens before EMS arrival. And we've got 10,000 volunteers out there who can do this, all right? In terms of get hands on the chest, hard and fast. It means Team Ireland are the poster child for the Resuscitation Council. We do absolutely everything asked of us. But look, disappointingly, our cardiac arrest outcomes are disappointingly average. And we've poured our heart and souls into doing Resus Council guidelines. Literally for the last 10 years, we've had only 1% increase in survival. So we're not doing that great. So back to the start, high performance CPR, nothing new, nothing changes. You've got your core principles of CPR that need to happen before, by guidelines that we have, good chest compressions, early defibrillation, and securing the airway. You're happy with that, yeah? All right. This is the sort of ECMO slide that gets taught at ECMO courses. So this is how the chain of survival is currently being portrayed by the likes of Lionel in Paris and Alice Hutting. And a successful resuscitation relies on two factors, which is minimizing the no-flow time. In other words, there's no hands on the chest. And that we do through good quality phone CPR, yeah? And then optimizing as best as you can this period until you get ROSC, all right? And that's optimizing the low flow time. So when I talk about low flow time, this is what I mean. So hands already on, and we want to optimize it. Now, where do you optimize to? So you've got a refractory VF. What usually happens to your refractory VF in your emergency department? You might get drugs, you might keep going, and they're still in refractory VF, and they're half an hour down the line. Where might they go? ECMO, if you have it. Everywhere? Okay. But to get to ECMO, thank you for bringing that up, because that was exactly what I was about to bring up. You have to optimize this period because we know that many patients you consider for ECMO and they become unsuitable because their low flow time is so poorly optimized. No flow time, no chest compressions. Low flow time, chest compressions. Okay, can we all just agree, because we're sensible adults here, that there is no silver bullet out there for the treatment of cardiac arrest? There isn't. Otherwise, we'd all be doing brilliantly. All right, and we all know that cardiac arrest, many hidden triggers, go well beyond an erratically kind of fibrillating muscle that we have in a VF. So there's a whole range of cardiac arrest scenarios. Do we all agree? Okay. Every single human being different? Yes? No? Yeah, okay. So there can't be a silver bullet. And we really only have one or two different type of algorithms, don't we? Right. Can we all agree that it takes time to adequately explore and discover the underlying cause of an arrest? And whilst we're doing this time, we're doing all sorts of things like taking our hands off the chest. We're mucking about, aren't we? All right. But we need time. And could we also say that arguably the worst use of this time is to do a really energetic, you're expending energy and you're trying to think. The human being doesn't do that very well, okay? So accurate diagnosis, and I'm not yet come to management yet, requires headspace and a lot of CRM, tranquility, calmness. I'm a huge fan of the Paris ECMO thing, and our kind of thing was trying, how do we get our patients to ECMO? All right? Because the problem is optimizing that low flow state or bridging the patient to ECMO. Anybody who's got ECMO programs knows that. And the first thing that always gets stressed on the ECMO course is that we need to optimize end organ perfusion oxygenation. And can we all agree that we do so many things in accepted practice to interrupt, to pause CPR that are completely at odds with optimizing end organ perfusion oxygenation, yeah? Because you just witnessed it there as well, all the pauses and things like that. And that's not me criticizing. It's just, that's how the algorithm goes and that's what we do, okay? Fully automated CPR requires automated ventilation, right? If you're going to be fully automated about it. But why did mechanical ventilation during CPR not even get a mention in the latest AHA guidelines? Why? Because every way we've studied inter-arrest ventilation to date, it's both ineffective and harmful, isn't it? So whether we pause to ventilate with an unsecured airway or we provide asynchronous ventilations with a secured airway, we do what? No, it's more than that. If we provide ventilation the way we're doing there now, we're inflicting completely uncontrollable airway pressures. You don't know what you're doing in the chest. It's not a criticism on you, but that's just it. All right? We're reducing perfusion, and asynchronous breaths lead to much, much higher interthoracic pressures. So you reduce venous return, you reduce perfusion. And increasingly, we're becoming aware that such strategies fail to overcome functional residual capacity. And I'll explain that towards the end, what I mean by FRC. All right. So in other words, we actually aren't ventilating them at all when we do those ventilations. So, cardiac arrest ventilation. It's not the same as spontaneous ventilation. You're cycling, which, spontaneous ventilation, you cycle negative, positive, yeah? Okay. Your lungs are splintered open with what? Intrinsic PEEP? Happy? You know what I mean by intrinsic PEEP? Right, so that's just your musculature, your physiology, okay? It's not the same as providing assisted ventilation, which is positive pressure throughout the ventilatory cycle once you intubate it, is it? CPR. It's not. Because it's very controlled. You can make whatever pressure you want, okay? In ventilation, you do require PEEP to overcome the loss of physiological resistance in cardiac arrest, or if you anesthetize a patient. So you do require a little bit of PEEP, and that's a dirty word, I know that. However, what happens to this functional residual capacity? This is your normal breath. You guys have all seen this. You did this in medical school, yeah? Normal in, big breath in, normal, big breath out, normal tidal volumes. Well, all of this volume here, all the volume that's in the lungs, and all this functional residual capacity, when you press down on the chest, you don't just squeeze the heart, but you squeeze the lungs as well. Did that ever occur to you? Yeah? Okay, so doing vigorous compressions can actually be demonstrated if we deform the lungs well below that functional residual capacity. You literally lose 3 liters in the lungs immediately that you do cardiac arrest. All right? And then you progressively squeezing all the lungs out of the alveoli as they collapse. So think about it. Repeated compressions literally shut off all but the largest bronchioles. All right? So, lung is fully collapsed, as in that state right now. So provide a bit of PEEP. Or so by ventilation, sorry. You're not even overcoming PEEP there. So watch what happens if a little bit of PEEP valve is put on the lungs. Far better ventilation. Okay? And I know this is a dirty word. PEEP is a dirty word because we always get taught too much PEEP reduces cardiovascular return, isn't it? So too much PEEP reduces perfusion. We're always getting taught this. So it's simply not possible to adequately ventilate a patient during CPR without restoring the intrinsic PEEP. So I'm not talking about PEEP over and above what is normal. I'm just talking about restoring normal. And that's what we do. Okay, so guy in cardiac arrest, you can see that there's no PEEP here because this is flat. I give them a bit of PEEP, fill the lungs, and wash the bag. Bag in place. And then it starts contracting with each compression. Do you understand what just happened there? Okay, there's a few shaky heads. So, compression is ongoing. Does anybody want to come just do compressions? Okay, so here's oxygen is flowing. All right? There's no PEEP on this at the moment, just do compressions. So I put that on. There's nothing in that bag. All right? Progressively that's filling, so fine. So I'm putting a bit of PEEP on. And you saw that took about 30 seconds of a cycle to properly fill, and a bit of PEEP applied. Happy? You have to fulfill PEEP. Can you do the same thing? Thank you very much. You're getting tired. Can you do the same thing with a BVM? No. It's not possible because it's a fixed bag. Unless you put a PEEP valve at the end of the BVM. Then what happens? Because that bag doesn't do that. You want to just carry on there? That bag doesn't actually do those ventilations. Can you hear the ventilation? You can hear that, can't you? Yeah? A fixed bag doesn't do it. So we advocate, thanks Anne-Marie, so we advocate the use of sea circuits or water circuits. What do you call them? Hey? Correct, you have them in the operating room. You don't use them in... Okay. So back to high performance CPR. To restore that functional residual capacity, you've got to recognize first and foremost that this is a normal physiological consequence of doing CPR. You have to restore PEEP. So you've got a few options. Number one, you can ensure adequate recoil of the chest. Did I just say that? Adequate recoil of the chest. Think about it. If you're leaning on that chest, you're still squeezing. So you have to do proper adequate recoil. All right? Number two, use things like water circuits. Okay? Do a recruitment maneuver. That's what it's called. So we shouldn't be using BVMs. All right? Do a recruitment maneuver with a C circuit and then confirm that that is happening. All right? And then, if you are going to use a ventilator of some description, clamp the tube before you put the ventilator on and unclamp the tube so that you don't lose all of that functional residual capacity that you created. Does that make sense? If you have to use a BVM, it's not ideal. You need to use a PEEP valve on a BVM. Okay, but that BVM, you're then having to do asynchronous breaths. And as you're doing asynchronous breaths, you're worsening your cardiac return and you're decreasing your cardiovascular output. If you're doing asynchronous breaths, you're putting increased pressure into the chest.
The synchronous breath that you showed.
With this is not synchronous breaths. I'm not giving any breaths. This is 100% a passive process.
Yeah, my question was what type of volume do you get with this?
Okay, we can talk about volume now. I'll talk about volume now. This is a completely passive process. Okay, so what am I actually doing? Right, so first and foremost, just to say, I'll never get there fast enough, even if I've got a 292 brake horsepower beast. Okay, so usually in Ireland, as I've said, there's people there before me. So when I arrive, I'm arriving in the same state that you left there when you were doing your CPR. Okay, so when I arrive, I require a little bit of clean state because all the guidelines have already happened. The patient is in a refractory rhythm or is just not getting ROSC. So to me, CPR is a bit of a placeholder. So that fully automated CPR allows me to bridge my patients, so bridge it to ECMO or wherever I am. So that's where this fits in. Okay? So the other thing is it allows me to gain a picture, a clearer picture than just that placeholder. Okay? And when this picture becomes clearer, only once the cause of the arrest, in other words, the diagnosis becomes apparent, can I make decisions about managing it. And those decisions can be what? Withdrawal of care? That's a decision. All right? Continuation. Take them to PCI lab, take them to ECMO, do something else about it. And this sort of thinking takes a leap of faith, okay? And I'm going to throw a pebble into your pond. And this is not necessarily the most comfortable pebble because I'm going to explain to you this physiology of CCSV. So, what does CCSV stand for? CCSV stands for chest compression synchronized ventilation, and everything is in this monitor so this patient's in arrest. There's SATs, in other words, there's perfusion. There's CO2, so in other words, there's perfusion. But look at the rate of the ventilation. Ventilatory rate is above 99. Why? It's the same rate as the CPR. Well done. Okay, so your ventilatory rate is the same rate as CPR. In other words, what I left you doing there, that passive ventilation is the first stage. Okay, that is interesting stuff. All right, so, yep. Okay, can I come back to dead space because it's a really good question. And I want to tackle dead space in two different sections. So the first section of dead space, if you don't mind me tackling, is when you are trying to provide 500 ml in or a liter in during a bag of a BVM. You literally are only ventilating, if you haven't restored FRC, functional residual capacity, you're only ventilating the large bronchioles. You very, very rarely are you getting things right down to alveolar level. So by definition, you're ventilating dead space only. Okay? And I'll come back to that once the lung is splintered open. Because once the lung is splintered open and you've restored your normal intrinsic PEEP, all right, then, and there's a clear line to the alveoli, then what are you doing? You're doing the same thing as you would do with an oscillatory ventilator. Now, I'll explain that to you for anybody who's not over the age of 40 and used to doing oscillatory ventilation on kids. All right. There's a smile from older anaesthetists. Okay. So apart from being VF, they've got a normal blood pressure. But the respiratory rate equals the chest compression rate here. In other words, chest compression synchronized ventilation. All right. So this is what happens in this passive mode that we spoke about. This is hands-only CPR. So all we've done is we've put a C circuit or water circuit on the top of that, okay, and put a bit of PEEP. So during hands-only CPR, the chest compressions generate a very small, but it's a detectable tidal volume. And during the downstroke of hands-only CPR, the intrathoracic pressure is increased. Well done. So blood is propelled out of the heart towards the lungs, the brains, the rest of the body. Yeah. And gas is exhaled. So downstroke is exhalation. This becomes apparent very shortly. So during recoil of the chest, the upstroke, provided you provide a good recoil, a negative intrathoracic or a relative negative intrathoracic pressure is created, and that is a vacuum effect. That pulls blood back towards the heart, the lungs. All right. The upstroke is inhalation. Okay. These tidal volumes are really, really small. Okay. They're below functional residual capacity if you haven't restored PEEP already, and realistically, they're only ventilating dead space. You're absolutely right. Okay. But they can be detected. And when the airway is secured, okay, and CCSV mode activated, I'm going to let you play with this right now. Okay, this unique waveform generated by those chest compressions, detected by the ventilator's flow sensors, and software interprets the signal, and it directs the ventilator to produce a 205 millisecond pressure regulated breath completely in sync with each compression. All right. So in plain English, CPR acts as its own ventilatory trigger. All right. The intrathoracic pressure obviously becomes increasingly positive during the downstroke because you're pressing down and there's breath coming in. All right. And so that greatly enhances the effects of compressions on central perfusion and systemic perfusion. So it's a true systole, if you like. And because the intrathoracic pressure is at its greatest at the end of the downstroke, what happens during the upstroke? Gas going in during the downstroke, that means gas escapes during recoil, which is the complete opposite of conventional CPR. So where we stopped there at this stage, everybody can do that tomorrow, provided you have a very cheap, very simple circuit. Okay? When you go into automating with a ventilator the CCSV, that's different, all right? And the enhanced negative inthoracic pressure pulls more blood back into the thorax, and that greatly improves coronary perfusion. It's a true diastole, if you like. And you're probably sitting there thinking, so what? Yeah? Okay. So remember I said that our team rural national average was 18% ROSC on arrival at hospital rate, okay? COVID then happened. And we were forced to then solve our CPR aerosoling unfiltered droplets into the cab. We had to simply do it. Otherwise, there was a derogation that we were just simply not going to be doing CPR on patients. If they were in arrest, they were dead. We actually made that across Ireland at the start of the pandemic. And we thought, as clinicians, we weren't quite comfortable with that. So, you know, we thought about everything we could do. And so I had this existing ventilator. This is the ventilator I normally use anyway. So we started to think about the CCSV mode, which you'd heard about and never ever used. Now, and sure, like why not? Like if you look at the studies, all the studies on it during that time when I first started using it were all done on pigs. And they're all very promising, but just a quick word of caution, if you interpret data coming from pigs, they're not humans. Didn't occur to you, did it? All right. They have a far more horizontal thoracic configuration and a lot of bony differences. And that plays havoc with standardized compressions. You can't standardize compressions on pigs if you've ever done pig studies. That's quite difficult. And to enable life in all fours, pigs' lungs have more lobes and the diaphragm is completely different. And so that's why have a bit of caution if you ever see pig studies and ventilation studies, all right? Now, so I was a cautious adopter, okay? To be fair, I wouldn't have started using CCSV if I hadn't had to automate the ventilation side and keep everything in a closed circuit. But by simply adding CCSV to Irish Pre-Hospital Emergency Care Council guidelines and doing absolutely nothing else, our ROSC on arrival rate improved to 27% in a pandemic. And we were like, oh, we might be onto something here. All right? Responding to cardiac arrest is messy. It's never perfect, ever. All right? In hospital, I actually find things are worse than pre-hospital, because at least pre-hospital, we're all on the same page. We just drill this, so we do this every day. Like, I'll go to arrest virtually every day now. You know, and I've done 150, well, actually more than that, about 170 now pre-hospital cases since I started fully automated CPR in the last 3 years. And probably another 25 in hospital as well. But in all this imperfection, we started seeing some pretty well perfused patients in cardiac arrest. Those are SATs measured at fingertips. I think you'll all agree that's pretty unusual, yeah? All right? And what did the patients start doing? They started waking up, and they started having relatively normal perfusion. They started breathing back at us. You can see that in that. This is despite being in arrest. So CPR-induced consciousness, it was really a thing now. It wasn't just a, you know, and our blood pressures were pretty damn good in arrest, all right? And we thought, wow. But there was something quite not right, okay? Our results were not reliable. And in some patients, the CCSV just worked. And I now know that most of that was down to what I now know about optimizing FRC, okay? So we do that first. And we weren't doing that at the time. And in others, it was just disproportionately, just average, just did exactly what everything else did. And responding to cardiac arrest became quite a challenge. And there were now calls I wanted to go to again. I think anybody who works pre-hospital, even here, will go, cardiac arrest calls? Nah, why bother? They're dead. It's true. All right. And so we were starting to step outside the guidelines, and we started to appreciate the captain obvious, that every patient responds differently depending on their pathology. I know that sounds really obvious, but we really started questioning the guidelines, because the guidelines just treat everybody the same. And this concept of optimizing fully automated CPR became a thing for us. You know, and it wasn't for cocky bastards. Cockerel on top of cocky bastards. Don't get the joke? No. All right. Okay. So we started to appreciate that patients got ROSC more reliably when they got equal ventricular flow patterns, both positive and negative. And I will now show you what all this is, okay? All right. With tidal volumes, about a quarter of what you'd normally expect to give a patient, and end tidal CO2, really about a third of what you would normally produce. So how could we reliably get to the state? Now, I want you to listen to these guys' voices. You're hearing my firefighters in the background optimizing CPR. They are gaming CPR. They're looking at the screen, this one, and they're looking at that screen of the ventilator, gaming it. Listen.
We'll be smelling you from. If you're fine as it is, so just keep your eye on that there. That's all you need.
You might not understand the accent terribly well, but they're going, hey, I'm getting better CO2 than you.
110 is probably the optimal.
So he's saying, oh, you're going too slow, go to 110.
Slightly faster, get up to 110. There we go.
Check patient.
That's spot on. Okay, this is feeling like it's confusing.
Check patient.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So, gaming the resus aside, I'm convinced that human factors reform probably played the greatest role in our successes going into 2021. We literally let our firefighters and the ventilator handle that patient pinking up bit. That was just automating everything, and we never stop CPR once it started. The critical care team was now able to think. It was definite CRM win. And we're able to think about what? Why did that patient arrest in the first place? We were able to go to the family with a bit of headspace, knowing that perfusion was happening. The senior doctor was able to go around and say, John, Mary's really unwell. Can you tell me a bit about Mary? Oh, sure, Mary has not been right for years. She's got very bad lungs and that CO3 thing, and quality of life's not good. Okay, I think Mary's dying, right? Right, guys, stop. Dignified. Or, Jesus, Mary was out for a run earlier today. She runs 12 kilometers a day. She's really, really fit and healthy. And this is totally out of the blue. It's a totally different pathology. Why is she in refractory VF? Okay? So we had CRM tranquility. We had the headspace to really use things like POCUS properly, optimize things, make choices, direct referral to angio versus, oh my goodness, this is a massive PE, give thrombolysis. And we're doing so with time in our hands. And I'll show you how much time. And our ROSC on arrival to hospital rate increased to 32%. Yeah, now we're getting somewhere, all right? And this is in Ireland. You skeptical? I'm sure you are, okay? And the skeptics started asking us questions as well. And so we really had to bring our data back, all right? But before we go through the data and show you how we did this, I want you to have a practice. So anybody can come forward, same team as last time if you want to, and put fully automated CPR into that patient. Want to try? So you have to get back into that automated, you have to get back into your CPR rhythm with that. Now, because of the way the oxygen is configured, I'm going to have to blast out one cylinder and put another one in. Okay? So get back into it. No, get back to where you were. So get CPR ongoing.
Okay, let's start.
Yep. And you're going to try and put some monitoring on the patient, and you really aren't really getting much back. I mean, you're just getting a poor perfusion.
Yeah, now you need first oxygen to open the lungs.
Yeah, I need to. So keep going. Get that oxygen to open the lungs. Get that. Let's practice that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now
You do not need to breathe for the patient.
How do we operate this to get feed?
So that's an adjustable PEEP limiting valve, APL valve. It's on a spring. You screw it down. If it's fully screwed down, the PEEP is 60. Okay. If you have a little bit of, no, don't worry about it. Just get what it needs. That's too much.
now it's working. You see?
That's far
Now
too
they
much.
Open up the lungs.
Just
Yeah,
come
not
out a
too
bit. It needs to be a bit softer. Okay. Now resist the urge to breathe. Right. We're going to now put a ventilator on and start CSV mode. I want you to literally, all you need to do, you can either block it off with your finger, which is a bit dirty, All right? Or you can clamp the tube. But block it off with the fingers,
Clamp
probably
the tube,
easiest.
but we don't
Okay,
have a cover,
ready?
so do the clamp. Yeah.
Ready? Clamp. Okay, go.
Remove it and put the fan.
All I did was just change the
Put
oxygen
it
over.
inside the lungs.
So it's all onto the
Turn on
ventilator
the
now.
device. Oh, okay.
Look, shit happens.
Ah,
That's okay. This is the real world.
oh.
You happy? Okay.
No, it doesn't fit. You have to remove it.
All they're battling with is just the angle piece. They're just not used to using that particular angle piece.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That's fine. Okay. Unclamp the tube, get CCSV started. Now, guys, please, feel free to come and look at this
Look.
if you want to. So come back up, Amri.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. I hang this here.
Yep. Okay, Amri's going to coach you through this, optimizing your CPR.
Okay, we see positive pressure. So you're pushing in some air. And then recoil, because now we don't have the negative pressure. So the air is not going out. There's air going in, not going out. Your frequency is good, 100. There's still leakage on the patient side.
That's fine.
Oh,
Leave
wait.
it. Leave
Yeah,
it.
you see?
See,
It's
there's
going out.
leakage.
So, okay, we close it. Leakage gone.
Okay, good.
Okay, go on.
Okay, I promise you. See your amplitude of your flows in and out. It's really small. You're pressing too deep. Is that getting bigger? Yeah. Is tidal volume getting bigger? And I know that just by the sound. We've done so many of these now. I can tell it by the sound.
You hear? So the negative trigger from here, from your flow check, of the positive trigger, normally when you inhale with a machine, the trigger sends here. Now we use the positive trigger. So when she's pushing, air is going out, and at the same time, in a blink of an eye, in the 205 milliseconds, air is going inside. Under high pressure, 60 MBAR. Otherwise, it's not reaching the lungs. And then we are only...
And what's happening on the
at
monitor?
space.
What are you seeing on the monitor, on this monitor here?
88% sat and
And what is your respiratory rate doing?
yeah, it's
Very good compressions. Positive,
Okay.
negative.
You haven't got CO2 out yet.
And you don't lean on your patient.
Okay, you guys haven't got CO2 out
This
yet.
is your tidal volume.
All right, but it's coming.
Changed.
And the reason you haven't got CO2 out yet is because the patient's not perfusing yet. So let it come, let it optimize. There's CO2 on the one monitor, there isn't CO2 on the other monitor. Yes, there's CO2 starting on the monitor. Can you see it? What does it say?
CO2 is still 4.0.
On this one,
30.
30, which is
30.
about, that's kilopascals, that's in millimeters of mercury.
Are you doing 2 minutes
Folks,
CPR?
this is not exact. Hold on for a second.
Yeah.
All right, so this is optimizing CPR, okay? The ventilator is taking over all of the ventilations. It's taking that passive mode that every single one of you can achieve with this water circuit, the C circuit. By the way, the word water circuit isn't about water, in other words, flowing water. The guy was just called Waters. That was his name. We invented it. All right. It's also called a Mapleson C circuit. All right. So that's where the C circuit comes from. So you're taking the passive mode, and with fully automated CPR, with this ventilator, you're turning it into an active mode. And so you are reversing the effects of the compression on the inhalation. So you can hear, as you compress, gas is going in at 205 milliseconds during the downstroke, and gas is escaping. You can see there CO2, well, the CO2 is not coming out on that one. There's not exact science, guys, because I'm actually controlling CO2 from a little bobble over here. All right? All right? Okay. Now, remember we had the skeptics. You guys can play away with that all you like. Get a feel for it. Just swap yourselves over and get a feel for it.
What happens if you stop doing your compressions? Stop it. Ventilation stop. Please, wait.
No, leave it, Anne-Marie.
Okay.
Anne-Marie, leave it for a sec. Just keep going. Just keep going with CCSV. So we had the skeptics, remember? So I can download this data after each mission and I can see how my tribe is doing. I can see how the guys were doing. So this is a typical beat-to-beat or breath-to-breath data downloaded from the ventilator. This is 30 seconds of fully automated CPR. Guys, you guys all can practice while you listen, don't mind. Peak airway pressures, flows, that 205 millisecond breath there, and this is the end tidal CO2 as it's coming out. This is what synchronized chest compression and ventilation looks graphically, and it's really, really, really been difficult for me to articulate our approach, and even in my own understanding of what was happening, why we were getting these high ROSC rates, okay, until we started to do this. And we started to record what we were doing iatrogenically. Oh, sorry, what we were doing on the machine. So let's just stop for a second, so let's just keep the noise down. I'll just listen for this for a second. We'll be back onto this chest, and you guys can practice it all later. Just switch off, please. Oh, let's stop that. Right.
Hands off time is calling, and then we have a backup ventilation mode, IPPV. So if you do anything else during the resuscitation, your shock, adrenaline, medication, ultrasound, whatever, you have a backup. You get an alarm after what you say, hands off time is too high, apnoea, and the ventilator, I don't touch it. Backup from
It'll back up now. Okay.
So.
Right. Anyway, we started getting this graphically. So we're getting nice things like this. And it became interesting when you compared what we were downloading graphically from the ventilator with what you guys were doing. So we record what the guys were doing with the ambulance camera. And then you can actually see what happens. So what's happening here? This is an interesting one, okay? These flows are too positive. And some of you were kind of doing that there. The flows are too positive. There's not enough exhalation. Why? Why do you think that's happening? Look at it. Yes! Well done. Who said that? Awesome. Well done. Okay, you can see the PEEP is starting to drop. You can see all the flows becoming positive, and this was simply down to our paramedic getting tired, leaning on the chest. Well done. There is a little pause to put on our mechanical CPR and do a defibrillation. I know that's a bit long, but then what followed was fully automated CPR, which is, pretty consistent. Now, our biggest concern when we started this journey, and I'm sure all of you had, surrounds the pressures and potential for lung injury, because you're putting pressure into a chest, 40 millibars or 60 millibars of pressure into the chest. Now, this is CCSV in a 12-kilo child. Peak pressures, mean pressures, well within acceptable parameters, because the machine is preventing you from overpressurizing in the chest. Full stop. You know exactly what's going into the chest because it's being measured. All right? I know exactly what I'm putting into this tiny patient's chest right through to when we achieved ROSC and we switched to IPPV. Okay? And analyzing this sort of data and flow and pressure and looking at it in real time with what the paramedics were doing, that was our biggest win, because when we realized, for example, what IPPV ventilation, in other words, what ventilation you do if you use a normal ventilator mode, okay, does in terms of pressures, absolutely stupid high pressures if you're doing asynchronous pressures and compressions. So doing this asynchronous, in other words, this guideline consistent with a ventilator compressions is bad. We know that you're doing. And the other thing is, when you actually look at it, this is a pig study, you can actually watch the cerebral perfusion drop if you're using IPPV, or in other words, a normal ventilator mode doing asynchronous breaths. Using data to develop our technique, we had a 39% ROSC on arrival to hospital rate in 2022. So we really are starting to improve. Now, you guys all know it, okay? Sometimes, it's plain sailing, it's easy going, it's easy skiing, right? 2023 was when we started to look at compressions really properly. And there's evidence, obviously, that manual compressions are non-inferior to machine-provided compressions, depending on the circumstances, okay? And we don't rush in to put a mechanical CPR device on, all right? But automating in our practice really made sense. It doesn't get tired, it's not subject to human variation. You can provide head-up CPR, you can take people out of the house, you can do everything on it. I mean, it's easier to intubate if you need to, all right? And don't forget, putting really large lines in other words, heading to ECMO. All right, and the thing is, this wasn't the missing link for us in Ireland, and actually in Ireland, right, 53% of arrests had mechanical CPR, and that's because we have a mechanical CPR device in every single ambulance and response car in Ireland. It's mandatory equipment. So this wasn't our missing link. It was, so don't think the mechanical device is the punishment, the everything. It's not, okay? Incidentally, by analyzing pressures, we've realized that not all mechanical CPR devices are created equally. This is two different devices, two very different flow and pressure patterns. How important is this? We don't know yet. Okay, this is the same patient, by the way. We had battery issues on one device, and we switched to the other device. So this is interesting stuff. I have no idea what it actually means, but we do different flow patterns with different machines. I'm not here to kind of sell a product or mechanical CPR brand, far from it, but answer one question: how obese can your mechanical CPR devices go? How much space do you need to actually put on a Lucas device? Because that's the ones you use here. And we have them in every ambulance in Ireland. We mostly use Lucas. Okay. Incidentally, those little ripples you're seeing there are ripples created by fat. And this is really difficult. By the way, this guy now runs regularly. He's now started running. He's lost massive weight. He's under 100 kilos now. Okay. How deep should you be pressing? We have guidelines from pig studies. We found that plunger depth is really important when optimizing ventilatory flow using a mechanical ventilator. Really important. And actually, less is best in our experience. How fast or how slow should you go? What is the optimum CPR rate? Clearly, it's not the same for every patient because every patient is different. Is the word optimum actually quite a silly word, given that every patient is different? So my older patients, I tend to do CPR slower than I do in my younger patients. So, it's time to try fully automated CPR. You got that far. Do you want to try the mechanical device? Put one on. See how that works? Anybody? Anybody who's not done it before, just come on up. Just play with it. We'll put the mechanical CPR device on. Now this is pretty easy. Anne-Marie will help you guys.
So
Come on, he needs help. He will need someone to lift the thing.
because somebody has to do the compressions, and still the CPR mode is still on. So if you start the compressions, the machine starts from switched automatically from IPPV to the CSV mode because it descends from the positive.
Sorry, this is really irritating me. Could you recoil more, please? Yes. Thanks.
You really can see if you do proper.
You just know we're so used to optimizing that you just know from the sound.
Just look at the flow curve.
Well done.
So now
That's
we're
really good.
putting this plate under beneath the patient. Yeah, you have to stop one more time. Yes. One. Wait a minute. One, you have to put it straight. Yeah, like this. Yeah. And then we can go continue with your CPR. Just have to go in here. Yeah. It doesn't matter which one you use. This is the corporal's arm, but you can also use the Lucas or the Autopulse. Doesn't matter which. So you, not too fast, because it's wet. So yeah, okay. And now it starts automatically. The machine has only the thing what you have to do is change to the mechanical compression device mode. And then you don't see the colors anymore because it's fixed rate. But still, you have to take a look at your curve, your flow curve, what's going in and out. So maybe the position...
So that's not very good. That CPR is too deep. So we're going to just, if you mind, just dropping the plunger depth down to maybe 3 or 2. Now watch the flows going up. No, it's still not enough. Go down to 3.
Okay, go down to 3.
It's seriously, it's too deep still.
Okay, confirm. Yep.
There we go. Watch tidal volume come up.
See immediately a better flow curve, so more in and out. It also can be the position of the thorax, so it can be.
Position okay now, or should it?
Yeah, you can see the flow curve, and otherwise you can
Fine.
still. It's fine, but you can still change a little bit.
I might take some PEEP off that just to see if that improves it. Now, the reason that you've got that different mode is the ventilator software is looking at the curve underneath the flow. All right, and so it's looking at the curve, the shape of the curve as you're pushing down. And that shape of that curve is really, really important. So it's interpreting hands are very, very different to a machine because a machine has a very square shape to the flow curve as it's pumping down. Oh, look, you're getting CO2 back. Oh, my goodness. You might actually start resuscitating this guy. Okay, this is good. There's CO2 coming back. That mannequin might actually live. All right, so what we're typically seeing here at this point is whilst these guys are actually actively in VF arrest, all right, we're starting to see, as I said, these normalizing sats. All right, and it's really, really, really scary when you first start this process. You think this is just not normal, but it does, and these patients pink up and they do very, very well. So our CO2 traces, and I'll try and just to, I know I'm using a simulator here, so it's a little bit different to what you might expect. But if you look at the CO2 trace over there, it's starting to mimic that flow pattern there. But the CO2 over there, as it's coming out, do you see it? So the CO2 is at that rate of 90. And so we know this is now automated. And getting into this automated state this year, really focusing on chest compressions, our ROSC rate on arrival to hospital in Cork City is currently 47%. Okay, this doesn't mean that they survive. This doesn't mean that they're alive at the end of it. Our outcomes data is being looked at the moment by the registry because we've skewed the registry data so badly in Cork. All right, so we're reliably getting people with a pulse to the hospital. Okay, this is what we're getting. This is what's happening. So you're seeing a few other things there in that photograph, in that video. I'll play it again just in case you missed it. So there's your blood pressure. This is a normal non-invasive blood pressure. CO2, that's the obvious rhythm, which is a VF underneath that. And there's SATs. He's just getting right. But look how we've got this person. So there's your good tidal volumes. You've got CO2 coming back. And there's our flows, both positive and negative, on a mechanical device. Right? But look at what else we've done. So this patient is head up. So 30 degrees head up is what we've found works very well with our perfusion. We start to improve the pinking up bit. So we're not just looking at the ventilator now, we start looking at the patient. And we start looking at the patient pinking up because we find that is really important. All right? Now, the registry people are looking at me at the moment like this. Although they're doing the data because they're getting the data. I'm not providing the data. All right? I'm that confident in the perfusion that's provided by the fully automated CPR with CCSV that I never, once I start this, I never pause it until we're seeing proper signs of life. Okay? Including defibrillation. So I defibrillate while this is all going. All right? And what we're getting on the screen is such a good trace with the VF. Underneath it, you can actually see, you can do a look-through. Without look-through software, we'll actually be able to see, okay, we've now defibrillated, this rhythm has definitely changed. I mean, we give it the 2 minutes, and then we stop our CPR, and we see what we've got ROSC. Okay? Look, we all know sometimes the route is really simple. You get a young, fit, healthy person that's collapsed in front of somebody. They started CPR early. It's a defibrillatable rhythm, and you defibrillate, and grand. They wake up, no problem. You know, we know, though, the conditions are very, very far from perfect. I live in the real world, okay? And the system I work in is far from perfect. And it doesn't matter how much of a wizard you are at resuscitation, depending on you and your patient's current circumstances, that mountain you're climbing can be simply impassable. You know, you need to regain your bandwidth, and you need to find a little bit of tranquility and shelter in the storm. Now, I did mention to you that our transport times are really long, all right? And I'm talking hours in some cases. And we had this guy who had we knew we were 70 minutes away from hospital, profoundly hypothermic, 27 degrees. We had done everything. We had arterial line in, we had fully automated CPR, everything, and refractory VF, hypothermia. You guys deal with more hypothermia than we do. Yeah? Okay. So we suspended all further treatment as per the guidelines, yeah? So no drugs or anything like that. I just want you to do one thing. Now remember, he's 27 degrees centigrade. Can you actually tell the skin color, which is the patient and which is the critical care paramedic? Look at the arterial blood as he's putting the outline in. Look how pink it is. All right? Okay, by the way, we don't shy away from endovascular stuff, right? We put in outlines during arrest, And actually, this sort of platform with a mechanical CPR ongoing is actually pretty easy to put in big lines. It's not that difficult. It's very difficult if a human is compressing. The patient's shaking all over the place. I know that this person's perfusing. I can see it. This is him. This is the actual patient. So SATs of 81. Now remember, he's 27 degrees. You regularly don't get SATs. Good tidal volumes, good end tidal CO2. You almost think that if you defibrillate that, it's going to actually cardiovert, but he's too cold, all right? So we transported him. This is his nice, stable ventilatory flow patterns over a 5-minute period. That's a snapshot. Now, to answer whose question had it about dead space? Yeah. CCSV is analogous to an oscillator. It's a well-accepted ventilatory modality. You can look by the age of the machine that this is really the older of us in the room have used oscillators as anesthetists. Basically, with an oscillator, you open up the lungs, right, with PEEP, usually high PEEP, and you oscillate. You don't ventilate. You don't push the air in and out. And that oscillation sounds like a Harley Davidson, actually. It's a really, really weird sound, right? And that oscillation, gas flows against its concentration gradient and is assisted by that oscillation. So, as in oscillatory ventilation, the tidal volumes and the end tidal CO2 are normally low. All right? So effective resuscitation is achieved because the tidal volume of 2 mils per kilo is multiplied by a factor of what? The respiratory rate. And so 2 mils per kilo multiplied by 100 to 110 is remarkably physiological. It's a normal minute volume. All right? And this is the arterial blood gas I took 1 hour 40 after commencing fully automated CPR. This patient is still in arrest. Yeah. It's pretty normal, isn't it? Even the potassium is normal. In other words, he hasn't got cellular death. His lactate is 4.3. Right? So, I think you all know in hypothermia, if your lactate rises and your potassium rises above 10, that's usually, just switch it off. That's usually a sign to stop, isn't it? Yeah? But no, we had to go. So we sent him to ECMO. And the problem was we had a heart on the table already. All right, so they had to call in another team to do it. All right, so they did it in the anesthetic room. This is him, with that ventilator. That's my ventilator. Right? We're not even using the Boyle's machine. We're not even using the normal ventilator. That's him there, CPR device still going. They're putting the big lines in. So this guy had a non-perfusion rhythm for 3 hours. All right? And we discharged him neurologically intact 3 days later to a psychiatric unit. So that's fully automated CPR. It's something a little bit different. You wanted cutting edge at your conference, you've got it. All right. This is really exciting stuff. It requires quite a good bit of training just to get used to that machine. But we've got a good 15, 20 minutes that you guys can use to play with it now, if you want, before you move to other skill stations, or have a discussion. Are there any questions? So many questions. All right. I'm here all night. Play with it if you want to. And ask away.
Considering the time period of this,
Have you got that box? Just for the, throw that mic down, will you please? All right, don't worry about it, sir.
I'm just thinking about the
Oh, here, one.
focus on the lungs.
Yeah.
Could that be a possible confounding factor of your, success rate?
So I showed you my progression of my success rate. So it was very much a step-by-step process because, and the company will admit this, they developed this mode and they sort of saw it working on pigs and gave it a little bit of a percentage rise. They didn't expect what we were doing with it in terms of really digging into the science, the respiratory science, really changing things. And bear in mind, what have we changed? We've stopped blindly following the guidelines. Yes, guideline consistent CPR, everything up until the point of putting them on the CSV. And once we've started the fully automated CPR, we optimize according to the patient. It's that optimization piece that's the different. It's a big difference. And you certainly can't optimize patients when you are physically doing CPR yourself. That's number one. But even with mechanical CPR, that piece of the ventilation, we never had it right. That's why the AHA guidelines, which are published in November, they don't even have ventilation in the brand new AHA guidelines because we know that it does more harm. And so we might have cracked this nut. The optimization is so different. Sorry?
And of course, we have to do more studies about it, not only the pig studies. And we're doing at the moment in Madrid a study to compare this with BVM and CPR, with IPPV and manual CPR,
And also Vienna.
and CCSV.
With Vienna, we're going to be doing.
And Vienna we start, and then we start with mechanical compression device together with the IPPV or the BVM or the CSV. So that's also a randomized study. So of course we need more data, more evidence that it's really better or even the same. Yeah. But at the moment, we use CSV already in a lot of countries because it's proven and via the ethical commissions that it's not harming the patient. So it's legal to use it, but of course we want to prove that it's even better than the normal convention mechanical ventilation. And we all know, because we still see it also in ICUs, that when there's a resuscitation, the first thing what they're doing is disconnect the tube from the patient host from an ICU ventilator because of all the alarms, the high pressure. It's really annoying, and the air.
No, that is the key. I mean, that restoration or the maintenance of functional residual capacity is absolutely everything. And the French are really good at this. They've really started to study this in great depths. And so a lot of that research coming out of France is all about restoration of FRC. I really do implore you guys, if you make only one change, only one single change is that. And stop ventilating your patients by squeezing a bag. Let it go passively. If you do nothing else, it's the only change I would recommend. Yes, stupidly high PaO2, and I'll give you the reason for it. So the ventilator is pneumatic ventilator. At the moment, the technology is being developed for turbine ventilators to get up to that ability to provide 205 millisecond 40 or 60 millibar breaths at a rate of 110 to 120 reliably. We sort of can just get there, but from an engineering perspective, we cannot provide the safety margin. So at the moment, the turbines aren't able to provide it. So we are not able to turn the oxygen down. Okay, that is the reason why they're hyperoxygenated. We can go around the houses discussing the merits or demerits of hyperoxygenation. Remember that there are some camps who believe that hyperoxygenation is extremely bad. And there are other camps who, particularly the divers and the technical guys who run the hyperbaric units, they're going, yeah, whatever. Okay? So, there is evidence that, yeah, we finished. There is evidence, okay, to support hyperoxygenation being bad in such a system. There's a whole research and evidence around ischemic reperfusion injuries and actually those people who have been slightly hypoxic doing better. There's some really weird research around that. At the moment, am I worried about that? No. Because I know that they're oxygenating at the very least, because they've been very hypoxic to begin with. Is that something to look into in the future? Yes. When we have turbines, could you turn the oxygen down? Of course you could. You can go down to 21% with a decent turbine. But at the moment we can't do it. We simply cannot do that with anything else other than pneumatic. There's your geeky answer. And by the way, I love those questions.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, guys, feel free to play with it. It's here. I mean, there's a little break now, and I think the next bit of sessions, I think they start at 3, is it? Yeah, the next session start at 3. So thanks very much for your attention.